There at a certain time, I really felt like, somebody else was running my life. This is a schedule that you have to keep. This is what you have to do. And then I would see, my colleagues, and some of them have been working at the same place for 40, and they had plaques like on their desks, 40 years of service at so-and-so company. And I'm like, if I ever get this plaque, please, somebody come and take me. I want to do something where nobody really knows what I do, but I make a lot of money. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like or what that's going to be. And this is me in a corporate world, not knowing and just leaving it open. But I knew I wanted flexibility. I knew I wanted to make good money. I knew I wanted to support my kids in the best way that I could. I knew I wanted to travel. And there was a stretch of time where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I have no idea.
Welcome to the Adriana Ostapenko podcast. I'm here with a really good friend, Ilona Koziol. It's definitely always so special to do these live episodes because we get to hang out and talk and catch up, have lunch. So I'm very excited about this. I started this podcast because I come from humble beginnings and I learned how to get myself to a place where life is just pretty incredible, I have to say. We've learned so much together. We've grown so much together since we've known each other. And if we can inspire one person out there, educate, give you tips and tricks to make your life better, this is really the whole purpose of this podcast. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Can you give us a little intro of who you are?
Yeah, so where do you start? I started I know, we're going to talk about real estate, but I started in real estate in about 2020 actively by joining an investment network, as we know, that's, where we met. And I did real estate development for a couple of years and learned a ton of things and, joined all the networks and built relationships with key individuals. And now I have opened a mortgage brokerage, as you know. So that's been an exciting journey. And that's, just the process of continuously learning and continuously opening businesses and, continuously taking the experience that I've had and pouring it in. And it just has been compounding and compounding and compounding. So that's kind of where I am today.
I think when we tend to introduce ourselves, it can be very modest. So I'm gonna enhance your intro if I can. Ilona's a boss babe. She has a ton of experience with development, owner of a mortgage brokerage, does a lot of mortgage deals as well, and is opening some other couple of things that are coming down the pipeline, on top of being a mother of two, and living life to its fullest. You're one of the most intentional, hardworking people that I know, and it's been so fun to watch a journey from dreaming something up to actually seeing you in it and it all happening. So thank you for allowing me to be part of that.
And you're a big part of that. And we have a special relationship. And I remember, when we first met and the goals and the dreams that we had. And I remember sitting on my balcony and in the condo, and we would sit out there with our blankets and just dream of all these things, and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And then slowly, all of those things happened, and they're happening and they're still happening. And, we were talking earlier about how important it is to have people, the close people in your life, be just as intentional as you, and constantly working on themselves. And we talked about awareness and having people in your life that have that awareness as well, working towards goals, being able to look at themselves too, because often we have those conversations. We're we see something in each other that we're maybe you could do better. And it's always we were just talking about this, we just sometimes tippy-toe around the subject, with no criticism, with all the love. This is what you're doing, and so we're so blessed to have people like that, in our lives. And I think, our relationship has been so special over the years. We've stayed super close, and we've always had those really intentional conversations versus, the gossip or the whatever, talking about whatever it is, and always talking about solutions and, you know, helping each other with perspective. And you know, we had this, since the condo days, we've had this growth, like this parallel growth. You know, you're working on all of your businesses and all the things, and I remember celebrating so many times with you, like on the yacht, and you know, we're close, and just having people in your life that can really celebrate your wins genuinely. And I really feel like we're so lucky to have that, because every time it's like we're both winning. We're both, you know, you have a win and we're just like popping champagne and like, you know, it's and then that builds the momentum too, having those kinds of genuine people in your life that are also growing, also winning. And then it's just like, it serves as motivation, it serves as inspiration, it serves for celebration, like all of those things. So that's been really, really special.
That's such a good point, because like I tell you, like when something happens with you, like I feel it, like it's a body emotions, like I'm there, it's like it's happening to me. It's so crazy. She sent me a picture the other day and she looked just incredible, like in her full bright like boss babe look, just really commending the room. And I'm like, just felt this like pride and like almost as if it was happening to me. Like it's so fun.
Yeah, I know, seeing it, like seeing, especially now too, when you see other people on social media and what they're doing, and you know, even like being intentional about what you're consuming online, right? And I see, like, it's so exciting to see the people in our network constantly rising, like just leveling up, leveling up. And it's just, we have such quality around us. And we talked about this earlier, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day and she was saying, you know, a lot of the things and the people she's surrounded by in the corporate world, especially, right? They're always kind of talking about the same thing. And you're in this habit, you're in this comfort, you're in this like habitual thinking and speaking, versus we had a conversation and she's like, your perspective's so different. And I paused for a second and I'm like, wow, this is, you know, I'm so blessed to be here, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of intentionality. It was a lot of, you know, making mistakes and pivoting. But I've been having a lot of conversations, especially with my new agents, you know, how important the network is around you, how important it is to intentionally, and the awareness, like we talked about, the awareness has to be there first. Who am I surrounded by? What kind of conversations are we having, right? What are the people around me doing? And I think in the beginning, I did also feel a sense of like guilt. I felt a sense of like, well, you know, I've known these people for this long, and you know, this and this and this. And I think by living your true authentic self, some people will get inspired and come with you. Like, look at our friendship, right? We were both in a very different situation when we met, like, and then you just, you know, the energies collide and you're like, okay, let's go, we're rising together. And some people will fall off naturally. But you know, the people that are in my life today, I prayed for, you know, and so it's very intentional on like, who do I want in my life? And it doesn't necessarily mean, I'm going to get rid of this list of people because they suck, right? But
sometimes I know what that means.
But naturally you shed, right? Naturally you shed, because this is how I want to show up, right? This is the kind of friend I want to be. This is the kind of business partner I want to be. This is the kind of value I want to add to people's lives. And in turn, you know, these are the things that I want back. And
what do you do with the feeling of like guilt or obligation, like that you have to people that you've had in your life for a long time, for somebody that's, you know, really hoping to, you know, attract a new network of people in their lives? Like, how do you process sort of letting those relationships go? Yeah,
I think, again, intentionality. I think like with any, because it's just beliefs, right? So we have these beliefs stuck that I'm not going to be a good person if I do this, or I'm abandoning this person, or I'm not being a good friend because, you know, this person's having a hard time and I'm over here having a great time. So I think in anything we talk about this all the time, is changing the way you think about the particular subject, right? So a lot of journaling, we do a lot of journaling, right? Still do, but especially in the beginning when this is all becoming a practice, it's really about changing how you think about the subject. So usually when you're feeling guilt, when you're feeling, you know, even pity for these people, or you're feeling like you're abandoning somebody, those feelings don't make you feel good, even physically, right? You feel uncomfortable, your body language changes. And so that's my indication of, oh, this thought's not serving me. How else can I think about this? So you're just rewriting the story. You're rewriting the perspective. So, okay, this is how I feel now. This is my beliefs. I don't know where I picked them up, but who cares, right?
Yes.
Because maybe your parents, taught you, you have to be loyal. And for you to be loyal, you can't, keep changing your friends or whatnot. But, you're writing out what, and I do this about a lot of beliefs. You're writing out what I believe now. What are the things that I'm feeling about this situation today versus what do I want to feel about this situation? I love all the people that have come into my life. They all serve a purpose, and I serve a purpose in their lives. We're all growing and evolving, and sometimes we're, going in different directions, but we're all going to be blessed, So just being able to make that shift in your thinking, because you'll always attract more quality in the space of abundance, of love, of, when I say, not all your friends are meant to stay, like, again, I'm not just saying kick them to the curb and like,
Sure.
Screw you, you're useless in my life now. Like, that's not how it happens. It's really being intentional about what you want, what you want your life to look like, what kind of people you want around in your life, and then send everybody else off with love.
So you also said something earlier today, which I had never heard it that way or really processed it that way. You said, I paid for my friends. And
a lot of money. They were expensive. Very expensive.
So that's because you said I prayed for my friends, but you also paid for them. So talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So, back to the networks, and, I think I'm I have a very high risk tolerance, and as you know, I just go all in, and I will literally put every last dollar, especially on myself. I will bet on myself, because then I know, well, if I didn't work out, then I'm the only one to blame. I can't go after anybody else. But, back in 2020, I literally gave the membership was $30,000, and I gave the last of my money to this thing. And I was like, and then 3 weeks later, I got laid off, as you know, and that was a huge risk. But the thought process, and I didn't tell anybody, because I knew if I was going to go back to, and at the time I was working, in corporate, and if I had told these people I spent $30,000 on some membership, they'd be like, what cult did you join? Like, what do you mean that you got scammed? So I didn't want all that negative energy. So that's another thing too to point out, is be careful who you share what with, because the people that are not there yet, they'll squash your dreams so quickly that you'll never make a decision and you'll never take that action. But yeah, so I joined and I paid 30 grand for this membership. And I met a lot of amazing people. Why? Because they've also taken that step to invest in themselves. So those people with those kinds of personalities is what I want in my life. They're after the growth. Really, when you join this, it's up to you to do the work to get the value out.
100%.
Because some people join and like, well, I didn't get anything. Nothing happened. They think I'm going to pay today, and then tomorrow I'm going to be in a completely different situation financially.
Without doing much.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no magic secret pill that you can take and nothing happens like that. But I was very intentional on, who am I forming relationships with? Who am I letting into my life? Being more selective on who I spend time with. What are those people doing? And it's okay. It's like dating, right? Like, yes. It's like, not that I'm the last person to give dating
a lot
advice.
of speed dating with the Zoom calls.
And it was COVID.
Speed dating.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was COVID, and we had a lot of time, and same thing, like when you're finding and you're looking for new people in your life, it is a lot like dating, because if you go on a date and the person's not meeting your requirements, you're just gonna be like, okay, see you later, right? It's not a match.
You have to have chemistry,
right? Yeah, and we do as friends too, right?
Yeah.
So I think you go and you intentionally insert yourself into these places. Like, where are you spending your time right now? What are you doing? And it doesn't mean you have to go spend all this money on a network.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go out on a Friday night, are you going to go to the club or the local pub with all your same people? Or are you going to go and maybe find something, where people in business are hanging out? Or maybe you're going to find, and there's a ton, even free events, right? There's free events on Eventbrite and whatnot. But getting into different networks, especially networks where people are doing things that you want to do.
Yeah, so I love that. I'm going to reiterate that because I just see huge importance. When you said that, I went through my list of friends very quickly in my head. I'm like, yep, like all paid friends, literally, because I was at a phase where I wanted to invest in myself, and I was interested in certain things, and I entered that world, and I paid to enter that world, where I met all these incredible people that had also paid, had also believed in investing in themselves, and were doing the work in that same thing that I was interested in. So it was perfect. I'm like, these are my people now. And it was just also so natural and so quick to get into some deep relationships. And that's carried on too. Obviously, like you said, some people fall off, but some people have stayed. So don't underestimate the value of paying to be part of networks that are discussing the things that interest you, that are going to push you forward in your life. Because they've done the same. The people that have done the same, you've literally filtered a lot of people that wouldn't be willing to invest in themselves like that. And that ultimately brings you the highest quality of people that you
And we talk about this for events too, right? Like, people, and we've hosted a number of events and, together and apart. And part of the question is always like, okay, what do we charge for tickets? What do we charge for tickets, right? And some people take the, one route where it's like you kind of you don't pay anything, but then you kind of pay when you're there. Maybe you pay for dinner, maybe you pay for drinks, whatnot. Then you go to the extreme opposite where you pay for everything, and then now the tickets price is high. And then kind of in the middle, when you do offer certain things and value and whatnot, then when you have a range of what you could charge, I think that you're always getting a better quality when you charge more money. Because it just is what it is.
People show up differently.
Right. People show up differently, and it's not just come one, come all, and you're filtering it out. And that's why all these, masterminds and things are so valuable, and people continue to invest in them because they want to weed it. It's like, if you're Christian, you're not going to go on Tinder, okay? You're going to go on Christian Mingle. Like, you want to weed out everybody else. That's not a Christian, right?
Yes.
So you're just bypassing all the wasted time and energy, and being more intentional. And I did a lot of that too. Not wasted, but I did spend a lot of time weeding out and having lunches and having this, and spent lots of time building and finding relationships that worked for me. And some people thought I was crazy. Like, to just go for lunch every single day. I'm like, yes, I do. With different people and different networks.
Lots of oysters.
Yes, lots of oysters. But that's how you get to know. And I think, one of the things that I was talking about yesterday with actually one of my new agents is, in the beginning, or my experience from the corporate world, I'm so happy because I was in transportation sales, and the sales cycle was very long. It was not transactional. It was, some of these contracts came up in the next 2 years, but I was reaching out to you today.
Yes.
So what do you do together for 2 years when you're not giving me any money?
It's like relationship building. You don't have it either way, right?
I know you're not going to sign a contract with me. Even if you do, it's not going to be for the next 2 years. So I acquired the skill of building these long-term relationships, adding a lot of value without getting anything in return. And I think a lot of people today everything's so quick, everything's so transactional. You want a quick turnaround, and then so people rush it. So they go, I see this all the time at networking events. People are just handing out cards left and right, and then those cards are going in the garbage, because nobody remembers.
There's no relationship. There's no feeling or emotions attached to that person.
Exactly. And I think that's what I've done really well over the last, 4 or 5 years, is being very intentional. And it was a journey of speed dating, and then, okay, out of those 20 people, I like these 5. Okay, and then out of these 5 people, let me spend some more time, and then they dwindle away too. Cultivating those relationships over a period of time. People are very afraid to do that because you could lose, right? You could lose all that time you invested, but when you know what you're looking for, and you know that you're being intentional about what you're doing and who you're doing it with, and vetting people and whatnot, you start to build that relationship, and then the business comes, right? That's how I've had that's how I've done business this whole time, right? I'm like, do I like you? Can I do work with you? Can I have a drink with you? You know, and then the business comes after, and it's so much more fruitful because you already have those relationships.
Because by the time you're talking business, the trust is there.
That's right.
You know each other so well. You know your ethics, your values. So it just flows naturally from there. Like there's no like trying to negotiate and like awkward. I mean, I'm sure there's some of that, but it just flows so much naturally. You are very good at that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's dive into like what has it been like going from like, you know, being an employee to being a business owner? Like, what does that look like for you?
Wow, I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that question. It's interesting because when I was in the corporate world, I always felt like I didn't fit in. And, you know, you and I talked about this before too, is when I had a job, every like 18 months, I would switch. Same thing with moving. I don't know if it has anything to do with, I was thinking about this too. When I was growing up, we moved all the time. Like I don't have you know, childhood. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, my home, and they get it framed and somebody paints it. Like, no, I did not live anywhere for longer than like 3 years, you know? And so that taught me, I think, adaptability too, of like different situations and different things. And, you know, part of my personality is I like to go and go all in on one thing. And then it tapers off. So I found myself in these situations in the corporate world where I keep switching. Plus, you know, that's how you make the most money too. Yes. How much of a race can you possibly get in the same place versus, you know, making a move? So going from like my whole lifestyle obviously changed, right? I was waking up at 4:30, getting the kid, I was, you know, going for my walk, getting the kids ready. I had to be there at a certain time. I had to be there at a certain time. I really felt like, you know, somebody else was running my life. This is the schedule that you have to keep. This is what you have to do. And then I would see, you know, my colleagues, and some of them have been working at the same place for 40, and they had plaques like on their desks. I'll never forget that. They had plaques, you know, 40 years of service at so-and-so company. And I'm like, if I ever get this plaque, please, somebody come and take me somewhere else. I don't care where, right? So those things were like almost red flags to me. I'm like, oh my gosh. And every time somebody got a plaque, it was like a whole celebration. They're so happy. Like we had lunch, and I'm like, that's not my goal at all. And it's funny because one of my goals when I first started, and you know, I was transitioning from being separated and going to the corporate world, and you know, just manifesting my life and journaling and doing all those things. One of the things I used to say was, I want to do something where nobody really knows what I do, but I make a lot of money. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like or what that's going to be. And this is me in a corporate world, not knowing and just leaving it open. But I knew I wanted flexibility. I knew I wanted to make good money. I knew I wanted to support my kids in the best way that I could. I knew I wanted to travel. Like I had zero travel in my job, right? And look how much we've traveled since. Like that was one of the biggest things on my list is I want to have flexibility. I want to be my own boss. I want to travel a lot for work. I want to have these opportunities. So in the beginning, it's like, you know, it's like having a baby. In the beginning, you're like, what the hell did I do? Why am I doing this? It's so stressful. Like, give it back, right? And then you're like, okay, now I'm learning how to navigate this. And of course, I had times, and there was a stretch of time where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. Like, I have no idea. And any other, you know, most people, and not that it wasn't a thought in my mind, maybe once or twice, is like, I need to go get a job. Mm-hmm. But I think when you can really get over that hump of like, oh my God, and not fall back to the comfort, you know, for me, when I'm under pressure, we talked about this earlier too, when I'm under pressure, that's when I perform the best. Yes. And the pressure was, I need to feed my kids. Like,
that's a big why.
Yeah, right?
That's like a big motivation.
And it's immediate. It was, the motivation was there because when you keep yourself in a situation, and again, I see this all the time, people are just like, one day, I'm gonna, you know, one day, but for now it's fine. I was pushed into that, right? And I don't know how much of it I manifested for that. And we were talking about that too, your hand, right? You got an injury and all of a sudden you're like rethinking your whole life. So, I wanted it. Would I have done it if that situation didn't arise?
Just like forced you into it.
Because when I did go to my first weekend in the investment group, I had a 5-year goal. In 5 years, I'm going to be settled at my corporate job. I'm going to have all these sales and have all this, residual income coming in. And then I'll take 1 or 2 days off during the week to focus on real estate investing. That was my goal. 3 weeks later, I lost my job. I'm like, okay, I guess that's it. God had other plans. So that does help when you're forced into it. And I'm the type of person that I'm okay to risk all of it. I'm going to risk it all. And if I fail, then I fail, and then I have experience for the next time. But if you're stuck in those comfortable situations, it's very hard, right? And most people wouldn't take that risk. A lot of people are not going to go and quit their job and start something new, and then watch their savings just like dwindle down next to nothing. But let me tell you, when those savings get down here, you're going to be like, okay, let's do this. And you have two options. You can go back to the comfortable, lifestyle that you had, and it's going to be kind of like maybe just a little bit like this, but the type of success we've had because we've taken the risk is like, and then you're like, goes down a bit and you're like, oops, okay, wait. Oh, and then, so we've had these moments, in transactions, in this business that are really life-changing, and I wouldn't have had those opportunities.
I could not have grown. We would not have grown in the pace and to the level that we have grown if we had stayed at our 9-to-5 jobs.
Never.
We just couldn't have.
No.
And it is scary as heck, and it's ups and downs, especially for you as a single mom, and like not having another source of income in the house. I can only imagine, even more so having to one is even more motivation potentially, even more risk too, and to get yourself to this place, it just says a lot. We were talking yesterday, I was talking with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about how your brain is meant to keep you alive. So if you really spend a lot of your time listening to your rational brain and your rational thoughts, it's going to keep you alive. It's going to keep you comfortable, because alive also means comfortable. So it doesn't want you to experience new things. It doesn't want you to push out. It doesn't want you to experience this fear of the unknown. Right. And what then, if it's not your brain, what makes you take those leaps? Because you're literally taking a leap and you just seriously do not know if the time you've invested, if the money you invested, if you don't know if anything's going to catch you at the bottom there. If it's not your brain, then what is it that makes you take that leap?
So I think part of it is, as a business owner, you have to be a little naive.
Oh my gosh. So I had a conversation with one of my partners, and he said to me, I guess there was a lot we didn't know. And I said, I know, we literally, I think we benefit from the ignorance of it all, ultimately. Because you're he was so he was about our development project, and he was saying he goes to these development conferences, and he's dealing with the big guys there, REITs and really big corporation, very corporate, very different than the networking, some of the networking that we do. And he said, and the funny thing is, those guys are working for these REITs, and they do the analysis, and they do the writing, they even do management, but they don't do development themselves.
Right.
Because they think it's so risky. And I'm like, okay, you're doing this massive development.
Because they know too much.
That's what we said. They know way too much. The fact that we have some ignorance in there is actually kind of helpful.
Yeah, I think again, it goes back to your mindset, right? Betting on yourself, knowing, and what is the inner dialogue. We talk about that all the time too, is I know things work out for me. There's not any real situation that I can't find myself out of. And, I have resources, I have knowledge, I have experience. And, as long as the plan makes sense on the logical side, then there's that little bit of fear of oh, do I do it? Oh, it's risky. But knowing that, anyone that started a business, they never knew the whole, you don't know every step of the way. It's you get to one stone, and then you check if the other stone is steady, and you're ooh, I might die if I go on that one. Okay, let me go here. This one's more steady. And you just kind of continue to go, and having a long-term vision is so important of where you want to be. But then in the meantime, you're just kind of taking a risk the whole time, right? And being resourceful, I think is one of my strengths. And I think I undermined that strength for my whole life until recently, where I'm like, I can get it done. And there's always somebody, I have somebody in my network, or I have some sort of experience, or whatever the case is. But again, having that inner dialogue of, I know it's going to work out for me. I know I'm capable. And this took a lot of intentional work. And I would literally, do exercises in front of the mirror because I had zero confidence. I wish I had a podcast from 6 years ago because you guys would laugh. Zero confidence. I felt like I had zero experience. I felt like nothing I did mattered up to that point. And, I think we disregard those things very easily. I was talking again I had all these Zoom calls with my agents this week, just getting to know them and seeing what their goals are. And one of the agents has, he lives in a part of Ontario that's, a different market, and he has investment properties there, and then he manages properties for other investors as well. And just the language he was using, he's like, I just have this small, this, and it just, and I'm like, no, you have a property management company, you manage properties. Oh, I only it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So we undermine what we've done because we're constantly chasing the next thing.
Yes.
And that small experience, even if it is you going from one property to another property, in that time you've learned something that a lot of people don't know.
Yes.
And that's so valuable.
So valuable.
But we feel like we need to be over here in order to be able to share. And then the imposter syndrome comes in. You're like, well, I've only done one property or two properties or whatever, and on the flip side of that, I don't think that everybody should be, and I know a lot of people become coaches, and that's a little dangerous too, but you can share that experience, even if it's limited, to help other people. And I think back to your question about, how do you continue to do it? The belief, you have to believe. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what you've already done, and believe that, you'll do anything to make it successful. And if it's not that thing, that's okay. I talked about this on another podcast. I'm like, I had 100 business ideas. I have a new business. Every time I take a shower, I have a new business idea, and some I would try and some I would talk it through, and it comes out as an idea, and you're like, you kind of filter through it, and you're like, okay, that's not it, next. Yeah. So I think that's another misconception too, is people see online like, oh my God, Adriana did this, and has all the hundreds of units, and like, I wish I had that kind of idea, like you were born with it or something, right? Like, no, that's not. And some people are like artists and people that like their talent just shines as soon as they're born. I didn't have that either. In fact, it took me until my 30s to figure it out. Yes. And I'm still figuring it out. And once this business is successful, I'm sure I'm going to want to do something new, right? And so I think just continuing to, and knowing how to pivot, and knowing that, and that's why I love your podcast, because it's so important to have these conversations behind the scenes, and not just like, here's my brand new building, 100 units, like, it's so easy, and I knew I was going to be a real estate investor since I was 4, like, no, that's not how it happens. You experience life, and then you continuously find the better feeling of like, this feels right, I know, and having that awareness to discern, I think is important.
I think also like listening to other parts of yourself. Because I think the brain will always pull you in a specific direction, and it's there for a reason. It has a really good, like a purposeful, meaning in your life, obviously. But there's different parts of yourself. You have your gut. Mm-hmm. Like, how about you listen to your gut a little bit more? You have your emotions and you have your feelings. How many of us are actually connected with any of that? Mm-hmm. How many of us listen and connect with like what your body's telling you, your physical body's telling you things too. There's very clear signs. I remember telling you that I learned or became aware that there was a specific type of business that I was doing that I just was not feel like, now I know that it's not really something that I want to pursue long term. And the reason was, every time I would go into these meetings, my body would literally shut down. I would like not want to be there. My mind is not listening. I'm like trying to get distracted, looking at something else, answering. Like, I don't do that in any other meetings, but I would consistently do it in that one meeting. And I'm like, this is just a clear sign to me. My body's telling me that this is not something that I want to be engaged in, even though rationally, I rationalize and say, hey, I have to show up to this meeting. And then this is good for my business. And it's important that I do something like this. And it's a big deal and I get to talk about it or whatever. My mind is telling me that, but my body's being like, nope, this is not for you. So besides like being able to rationalize or understand something logically, I think connecting with our gut, connecting with our feelings and emotions, connecting with our spirits, connecting with our physical bodies is just as important, or just as important to direct and guide you in your life, potentially even more than your brain, who's there and has a purpose to keep you alive. But there's all these other parts of you that are really guiding you in your everyday life that we don't always get to connect with, or don't always really stop to connect with.
And I think you have, like you said, I think you have to make intentional time for that, right? Because we're just going and going and going. And now, you know, ever since opening the brokerage, I've been going and going and going. And it's a lot of structuring and laying the foundation and, you know, managing a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. But really the creation and the creativity happens outside of the day-to-day. So, you know, when you're doing something and you're not sure and whatnot, and like you said, the awareness of those feelings is number one, because, you know, I gave you this analogy earlier. It's like a toddler. When you're not aware and you don't have that emotional intelligence, you just, you know, you take out your frustration in a tantrum, right? But if you can look at the situation from a different perspective, or like 30,000 feet above, you can say, okay, what's the situation? How am I feeling about this? Why do I feel this way? Is it because there's a level of discernment too? Maybe you're frustrated, you don't want to be there, but why? So it's like when you're scared to do something, well, I'm scared, so maybe I shouldn't do it. But why am I scared? Am I scared of the risk? Am I scared because I don't have the resources? Am I scared because I've never done something like this before? Or is this my gut saying that this is not for me? So you need to find that discernment, and that's a practice, you know? And it's your, like, you know, ever since my separation 6 years ago, I've been learning myself. And, you know, that is a process, because I need to learn, how do I react to this? It's like learning a partner, right? Oh, I know that this is going to trigger my partner, because when I leave the car, you know, on the driveway, and I know he's coming home, he's gets, you know, so, but learning yourself and taking the time to learn yourself. We're always busy, and as moms and as, you know, spouses and business partners, we're always trying to figure everything out and take care of everybody else. And I think that's been a big, you know, reason why we are this way, because we do spend so much intentional time learning about ourselves and being able to discern those feelings. Is this my gut feeling telling me, or is this fear, or right? So I think that's an important piece too.
That was my biggest lesson of last quarter. Like the quarter of last year. Last quarter of last year was not making, or the importance of making space in your life to sit with yourself and to listen to those things. Because I feel like from, like, you know, summer to the end of the year, I was so busy at work. We have multiple businesses, we have a lot on the go, a lot of people to manage, you know, properties, investors. There's so much going on top of kids and family and spouse and all of that. So I just got myself, and I started, and here's something that I realized, I started listening to all these like podcasts and reading books, which is how I learn often. Like, I'm listening to people that are experts, and I started listening a lot to business experts. And I started practicing, like, okay, they were saying, like, do these things and do those things. So I started like implementing a lot of what I was learning in my businesses. And I saw some results. Like, I did. I saw things, okay, things are moving, things are feeling better, there's more organization, there's more momentum, there's more, all of these things were actually, you know, generating results. The issue that I ended up feeling, though, was there were a lot of things that I needed to, when you're building something in a certain momentum, you start moving faster and faster and faster. And if you at some point realize that something is kind of going off rails, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much momentum, but maybe this wasn't the direction, or maybe it was at first, but now I need to pivot. I need to go to the right. I need to go to the left. I need to change something about where things are going. But the momentum is going so fast. And especially when you have a team, there's so many people involved. So the momentum is with everybody, not just yourself. So I realized that I felt like I just couldn't stop. And there was a side of me that was asking, that was like wishing to I could tell that there were things that were off and that I needed to look into, but I just felt like I didn't have the time, or I didn't know how to slow down the momentum that I had built. So something happened.
Yes, a freak accident.
I had this crazy accident that slowed me way down. And at first it was so confusing. It was so and I tell everybody this story because it was in a conversation with you where you ultimately told me it was my fault, the accident. I'm like, what kind of friend says that?
Yes.
After surgery and in pain, she's like, I'm pretty sure that was your fault. Tell me what made you cause this accident? And it was such a hard question to hear at the time. And my immediate feeling was defensiveness. I'm like obviously it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I couldn't have possibly. And it took me but I did sit with it, and it took me quite a while, because I'm like, oh yeah, I do believe in law of attraction. So therefore, I did attract this somehow. And it took me quite a while to and I'm still as you can see, processing as I have these conversations. It's really, I think all the desires that I had to change directions, to slow things down, were forced onto me, just like you getting laid off at your job was forced onto you. And it gave me the chance to sit with myself and ask those questions. Why is it that those specific meetings are so hard for me? What about it makes it hard? And therefore, how do I adjust things moving forward so that it feels better, so that it feels right to me? So how do we make intentional space without having to have an accident, without being forced to slow down, so we can take time to have those, sit with ourselves and ultimately change. You got to change your environment. There's no other way. You have to change, you have to break the pattern long enough to give yourself time to be okay, let me step back. Let me look from a different perspective here to make sure that everything is going in the right way and the right momentums are getting built.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I do is I intentionally take, as you know, I have one day when I don't have kids, right?
Yes.
One evening. And, whether you're married or not, or whatever the situation is, maybe you have kids, maybe you don't, maybe you work 3 jobs, who knows? But having that intentional time and sometimes that time that I allocate, I'm doing different things.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm dancing. Sometimes I'm I'm going to have a pampering day and just take a nice shower and, exfoliate and dance. And because your physiology changes things too, right? So we're constantly head down or on the phone or Yes. So just relaxing into it. And, sometimes I'll journal. Sometimes, I'll listen to something. Sometimes I'll write. Sometimes I'll do all these different things. But I think it's really important. And I think most people and the people that watch your podcast and, they are reading and learning and listening to other things. And, a lot of us do, they are searching for something. And like you said, unless you change your environment and the things that you're consuming and the conversations that you're having, those things won't change. You won't get there. And, there's a quote, and I don't know who said it. I think it was God.
Probably.
If I didn't make you, if I didn't make you uncomfortable, you would have never moved. So it's if you don't have an itch, you have nothing to scratch, right? So we have this itch. We have an itch that we're just constantly trying to scratch. And, making those changes and seeing and listening and understanding what other people have done in their lives. And most of the time when you hear these success stories, there was a massive change.
Yes.
Something happened, or somebody got into an accident, or, somebody got laid off, but like you said, knowing that, but what happens when those things happen? Everything shifts. So So you don't have to have something happen that's, devastating. In fact, we don't want you to have something happen that's devastating.
That's what I'm trying to learn here.
Yeah.
How do I never let it get there again?
It's like 75 hard,
Yeah.
right? We do 75 hard. Why? Because we want to change the momentum, change the habits, change what we're thinking about doing. And now, and it also really helps to have a buddy. Like
that is
a
true.
buddy, a recess buddy, like somebody that's also doing it, and to keep you accountable. And that's why we join these groups. That's why we join these masterminds, because every Wednesday we have to be on the Zoom call, and then everybody else is doing it. So it's those things are so beneficial, and having that network around you. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, but yeah, I think making that intentional space to do it, and drastically changing what you're doing, because everybody has a different personality. And our dear friend Zara, she her way is to incrementally add. It's like some people will start with 5 push-ups a day, and they'll do that for a couple weeks, and then they add another 5 push-ups a day, and then and some people's personality, I can't speak to that because I'm an extremist, and I'm like, no, I need to, and I've seen it work time and time again. When the people throw themselves in the deep end, and they're like, I'm just gonna figure this out. I'm just gonna change all the things that I'm doing that are not working in my life. And I think people also don't give themselves the permission to do that, because what if? Or what about this? Or what about those people? Or what about this? Or what about this? Right? So
I think that was a challenge that I was having, because I'm like, I have all these people, and I have all this momentum, and I have like all this schedule, and I have all I felt like I couldn't get myself out of it. I knew in my head I had to, but I didn't know how, because I had so much going on already and so much figured out, and especially other people. That's where I really get caught. I'm like, I have all these meetings and all this momentum and all this schedule, and the plan is already out there. Like I couldn't, I'm like, how do you even begin to, change things around? The truth though, and that's how I felt at the moment. What I realize now, or I already knew, but what I'm experiencing now is the truth is, when you do slow down and you do change directions, that new direction that you're going is, the whole point is that it's a more aligned direction for you. For me, it's more aligned, it's more connected, and everybody else is thankful for that. Because the same way that I was feeling certain things, that trickles down to people around me. They're also feeling certain uneasiness, because it's all energy. If the energy coming off of me is uneasy for some reason or another, everybody else is feeling some sort of uneasy, although nobody really can pinpoint what it is. And it's not until you're like, this feels right, and this is the aligned purpose behind what we're doing now, that really guides us in the right direction. Everybody's thankful for it. You're like, okay, we feel better. This makes way more sense. I'm way more excited now,
Well, being the energy of being in limbo and not fully being there, and like that affects everything, the business, the people. And it's so funny that you asked this question, because you answered this question for me a couple of years ago. And it's so much easier to give advice when you're not in it.
I love it.
But it's so funny because, oftentimes in our relationship, we'll just ping pong the answer back to each other. Like, remember when you told me this is your fault? Well, now I'm telling you this is your fault. And there was a time where, obviously I grew this development company with a really amazing partner, and something in me was telling me this isn't it. And same thing, I had all these projects, I had investors, I had meetings. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so thick into this, but something keeps telling me this is not it. And then I would just go back and forth and back and forth, and what do I want to do, and that state of indecision is the worst place you can be, because you're not actually intentionally moving in any direction. You're just stuck. And because it kept coming up and kept coming up and kept coming up, and there was no real resolution, and I couldn't really find a spot that felt good for me in that place, you said to me, and I'll never forget, I was driving, I had a really long drive home. I can't even remember where I was, but we were talking on the phone for like over an hour, and you're like, the answer. You already inside know the answer. So just move forward, cut it off. And once you make a decision, you leave every other possibility of that behind, and now you're moving forward in a direction with intention. And having that vision, and having now all of your energy can be focused on. And of course there's things you have to clean up and and like, you know, but you know that that's for a purpose. Of course, I couldn't just walk out of my business overnight. And it did take a long time to organize the things, but now I knew what direction I was going. And in fact, it's not even like I left for anything. I didn't leave because I had this new thing, you know, it just, I needed to make space. And for a while, I didn't really do much as far as like intentional business. And it's not like, you know, I left my development company and the next day I opened a mortgage brokerage. No, I really took time to work on myself, work on my relationships, and I almost laid myself off again because I've seen it work before. Like when I have nothing, it all of a sudden, I don't think, unless you've been fired or been laid off, or like I haven't felt that feeling before that actually happened to me. It's like all of a sudden I was questioning everything. Why do I live where I live? Why do I drive the car I drive? What, like, it just, you have this overwhelming sense of freedom almost that you're like, nothing is keeping me here. And I made that decision. I cut that off, and I knew anything. Of course, I was still spending time, you know, cleaning up, but I knew it was for a purpose to get out. And then I spent intentional time moving forward, searching and opening that space, opening up time and energy for new relationships and new ideas, and taking a lot of intentional time of like meditation and reading and listening and, you know, preparing myself for the next thing because I knew it was coming. Why? Because I was drawing it to myself. I had a goal. I knew I wanted to do, and I think sometimes we get stuck on the specifics of the thing too. Like we have to have it figured out. What is it? You know, you were talking earlier, like you're like, I'm drawing it to me. I don't really know exactly what it is, but it's coming.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So being open to that and letting things, you know, letting things go that are not serving you anymore.
I love that. Let's talk about like setting intentional time aside to have those reflections. We are hosting the Miami Mastermind again, coming up at the end of March. I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to ask you, and I talked to Jackie about this yesterday, so we have that on our, like, that podcast that's coming out. I even talked about mine. Wanted to hear from you. Do you remember what your mastermind was? And share as little as much as you want, but in the impact that it had in your life. And I'll just preface by saying what the Miami Mastermind is. Group of women that are leaders, entrepreneurs, ultimately, you know, women of influence that have this, like, you know, are in business or in the corporate world, are out there doing really amazing things, to come together for a 4 nights, 5 days Miami Mastermind in Miami in the USA. So it's really an amazing time to remove yourself, and this is really was impact that it had for us when we first went to Miami before we even put together the mastermind. The importance of like removing yourself from your current environment, putting yourself in such a beautiful, inspirational location, and then masterminding and being completely open to like, what can I possibly, like, how many dreams like we had at that time that came true in the last like 8 months to 10 months that we've been back. Tell me what what you feel like the impact was that it had in your life being at the Miami Mastermind last April.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. First of all, we were in like the most beautiful villa. So that, the location alone, I didn't realize how much of an impact that would have. Because you're, you know, and even the mindset about it, because years ago, if I had gone to a place like that, I would have been like, oh, wow, I don't want to touch anything. Oh my gosh, somebody lives here. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Versus, you know, going in there and really owning the energy and really, you know, just taking it in of like, wow, we've manifested this. We're here. I don't care for how long. I don't care if we're renting this place. I remember we were outside and I think Jackie was about to speak. And I was like, oh, you know, we were like, it's a little dark outside. Should we turn the lights on? Should we turn them off? And I was kind of inside playing with the switches. And I said something. I'm like, because there was like 10 switches. And you know, when you're in your house and it's like, which one is which? And so, you know, everybody was really quiet and I'm like, sorry guys, I just moved in. I'm still trying to figure out the switches because I was really just embodying like, this is it, you know, we're here. I don't care if this is an Airbnb or this is somebody else's villa, like just feeling that presence and being present in that moment in this luxurious, beautiful space is allowing that energy to come into your life as well, right? Another thing too is we had like 0 cell phone time. Like that was a big thing that I didn't realize was coming either. You know, we were very intentional. Nobody was on their phones. We had masterminds all day long. Everybody got undivided attention from everybody. So just removing yourself, you know, from having phone calls, thinking about work, and just being so focused on, you know, what the topic at hand was and what the intention of the weekend was. And you're learning so much. I didn't realize, you know, I think I got more from everyone else's mastermind than I did my own, you know, and I'll talk about what I talk, my topic for my mastermind as well. But as you're hearing other people's, you know, challenges and their goals and how you're kind of pouring into them, the answers, because there's only so many problems we can possibly have in our lives, right? And you can tweak a couple of things and be like, okay, maybe I don't have a husband or maybe I don't have that kind of business, but that applies to me. Yes. So it's like hours and hours and hours and hours of self-development and business. And we talked about all sorts of subjects, right? And I love that it's women, sorry for the men, but I love that it was women because we were able to be so much more open and vulnerable. And we really, you know, solidified a lot of those relationships over the weekend and made new ones, right? And I had an interesting topic. I think I was one of the first people, and it was supposed to be all business and all real estate, and that kind of changed because once you're there, you're like, oh, what is it? And it almost comes to you, you know, this is what I think I need support in. And my topic was, I did not feel worthy. And that was a big, big thing for me at that time, where I felt like, and through my mastermind, that's what came out, right? So it's not like I'm like, I don't feel worthy, help me, you know. But I can't even remember how it started, but we all, you know, by the time it was over,
we got to the bottom
of it, right? Like, I don't feel worthy of this success. I don't feel worthy of these and these things. And, you know, walking away with that, not that my problem was solved overnight, but now I know what I need to focus on. And, you know, I think over the last year, the biggest change has been working on that, right? Why don't I feel, again, back to journaling, right? Why don't I feel worthy? Why? Why do I feel guilty? Why do I feel, you know, again, back to, oh, my friends aren't doing so well. Maybe I shouldn't do so well. Maybe I'm minimizing myself. Maybe I don't have the right confidence. Maybe, is it, you know, my experience? Is it, what is it, right? So diving into that and then seeing myself here today, and now I'm just recollecting the conversation we had there. I'm like, who are you? What do you mean you're not? Hello, right? But that's a journey in itself, and working on that confidence and working on the mindset of, I deserve all the things that are in my life, because I feel like sometimes we block our own blessings, right? Because of these silly beliefs that are like, oh, I'm not worthy of this. And then because you believe it, it's not going to come. So I think that was, you know, I didn't realize how much of an impact it would have. And I love talking to other women that came to the mastermind, because they're like, I thought I was going to come and talk about this, and then I talked about this, and then I kind of didn't really know what to do with this. Yes. But now I'm like, you know, that's exactly what it was meant to do for them. So
I love that. I remember it so clearly. And the funny thing is, like, all the other women there looking at you and being like, oh, how is that possible? Because like, it's just, we're really pouring into each other's lives. So we feel the pain, we feel the empathy of the moment. And then we're also able to hopefully in some ways reflect a mirror back onto you of how we see you. And like, are you kidding me? Right? Like, Jackie was sitting here yesterday and she said that in her journey to coming to the mastermind, she's like, I didn't know that, I didn't think I had a light within me. I'm like, you're the brightest person I know. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're like literally so bright. And like that's what she talks about. She's like, I didn't know I could travel alone, that I could do things for myself, that I could like come to this place and experience all those things. So exciting. We're having Miami Mastermind 2.0 this year, March 27th to 31st. You have to come if you're a woman that's a leader, an entrepreneur, a boss babe that's really killing out there and wants to take the time to really explore parts of yourself. Listen to that voice, listen to your body, to your emotions, to your feelings, gain new levels of awareness, and really looking to expand and grow with another like 14 really incredible women that are there for the same reason. You gotta come to this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I think also through this time attracting new people, new levels, new, interactions and relationships. And, I know last year we did a lot of marketing and advertising and stuff for the Miami mastermind, and there was a little bit of a, how are we going to do this? Like, we don't know if we're like, I remember telling my mom, like, we're planning this mastermind and, we're going to go to this villa. And she's like, whoa, how much does this villa cost? Like, whoa, how much is this? You're going to get food? Oh, like, oh my God. And, how much are you selling the tickets for? And I'm like this and this. And then she's like, so you already paid for the villa? We're like, well, yeah, you kind of have to. What if nobody buys tickets? And I'm like, oh my God, stop it. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And so there was a bit of an urgency, and we did it so fast and whatnot. Yes. But now it's really the right people come.
I know.
And they did. And even last year they did, right? Because it's not something that, I think, when you have unlimited seats available, or we've hosted events with like hundreds of people, like, come on, okay. I think it really needs to, the people that are listening, they need to feel it, because we're also protecting the space, because it's such a vulnerable space and it's such a closed space that, like I sometimes say, it takes one person to piss in the pool. And then everybody has to get out. And you're like, oh, I was having such a good time, and then you peed. Now the water's contaminated, the pool's closed, you know what I mean? So I think that's really important too, and that's why we have these conversations with people that are interested first to see, is there an alignment? Where are you in your life? And it doesn't mean you have to be at a certain, there's no minimum net worth or and some groups have that, and I think that serves a purpose as well, but that feeling from within of like, I'm ready, and I'm ready to continue. And we've built really amazing relationships with those women and have been in touch, ever since. And so I think that's really key too.
I so agree with you. I was talking to a couple of the women that are coming already, and I'm like, we're really like, there is a bit of a hand picking, like, because we want to make sure the energy, and it was such high vibration. Like, it's really an environment to walk in, and it's such high vibration, such high energy, and also so open and so vulnerable, and so life-changing, and like the relationships and like the connections. It's a weekend that you're really, like, you just become so close because you get to know each other in such a deep level in such a short period of time.
I think another thing too is, not everybody's at the same level of even awareness. And the magical thing is, I feel, because we did some prep work too before, and we sent some videos and, things you can expect or what you should do, or things that you can prepare yourself mentally for at the mastermind. Like, one of the rules was no negative talk. We're not talking about anybody outside of here. We're not bringing, unless it's your 45 minutes, right? But we're not beating a dead horse here of problems. And, because you're coming in with all this energy, and you had the kids at home, and you traveled, and then you had to find a babysitter, and But I feel like because most people did the work of preparing themselves to be there, you have no other choice. It's like you get swallowed up into the energy, into the bubble. As soon as you walk through the threshold of that door, it's like you're in a different space, and amazing things come from being in that space and that energy. So I'm really excited.
Me too. I can't wait. We're going back home.
It's just another villa we have. It's no big deal.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I do end every podcast with the same question to my guests.
Okay.
The question is, if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what message would you share with everybody?
I think I would share, learn how to become disciplined with your thoughts.
Wow.
That's a discipline that, we can all have in our lives. We can all grow to learn. And once you have discipline around what you think about, your life will change.
I love that and believe that. Thank you so much, Ilona. Always so amazing to have you.
Can we record all of our conversations?
Yes,
we say that all the